Welcome to Nightshift Horror. Before we check in tonight, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know where you're tuning in from. Now get comfortable. The night shift is about to begin.
Story 1. The West Wing Access Log. The door was already unlocked when I arrived. No alarm, no forced entry, just my own badge swipe in the system log, time-stamped 14 minutes before I'd even clocked in for my shift. I began working overnight security at Mercy General Hospital in January of 2019. The position was straightforward: patrol all 6 wings on a rotating schedule, monitor access points, and document irregularities in the digital logbook. The hospital sprawled across 4 floors with 2 basement levels used primarily for storage and mechanical systems. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 4 nights a week. The pay was adequate. The work was solitary. I preferred it that way. Winter staffing was always minimal. By late December, the West Wing closed entirely each year due to heating infrastructure failures that administration deemed too costly to repair. The wing housed administrative offices, a disused chapel, and several conference rooms. Closing it saved on utilities and allowed maintenance to focus on patient areas. A chain-link partition was installed each November at the West Wing's main corridor junction, locked with a master key that only senior security and facilities management possessed. Standard protocol required a visual inspection of the partition twice per shift to ensure it remained secure. The hospital's access control system was comprehensive. Every interior door with electronic locks logged badge swipes with timestamps accurate to the second. Each guard carried a proximity badge that recorded our movements throughout the building. At shift end, we uploaded our patrol data to the central server. The system generated reports that supervisors reviewed weekly. It was bureaucratic but efficient. I appreciated the structure. My first 3 weeks were unremarkable. I learned the patrol routes, memorized camera blind spots, and became familiar with the skeleton crew of night staff. The emergency department remained active around the clock, but the upper floors emptied after visiting hours. By midnight, the building settled into a peculiar stillness broken only by the hum of ventilation systems and the occasional code announcement over the PA. I walked the same paths each night, my footsteps echoing against polished linoleum. The West Wing partition was located at the end of the main second-floor corridor, past the last nursing station. The area beyond the chain link was unlit to conserve power. My flashlight beam would sweep across empty desks and shadowed doorways during inspections. The lock was always secure, the darkness beyond always complete. I would note the time in my logbook and continue my rounds. The irregularity began on February 4th. I clocked in at 10:52 p.m., retrieved my equipment from the security office, and began my first patrol at 11:03 p.m. My route started on the 4th floor and worked downward, ending at the basement levels before cycling back upward. I reached the West Wing partition at approximately 11:37 p.m. The lock was engaged, the chain link undisturbed. I documented the inspection and moved on. At 2:14 a.m., I returned to the security office to file my mid-shift report. The access control system flagged an anomaly. According to the log, someone had used a security badge to unlock the West Wing's main access door at 1:49 a.m. The badge number was mine. I reviewed the entry carefully. The timestamp was precise, 01:49 and 22 seconds. The location was listed as West Wing Access Point Alpha. The action was recorded as badge accepted, door unlocked. But at 1:49 a.m. I had been conducting rounds on the 4th floor, nowhere near the West Wing. My patrol log confirmed this. I had swiped into the 4th floor nursing station at 1:43 a.m. and exited at 1:56 a.m. I assumed it was a system glitch. Electronic logs occasionally recorded duplicate entries or misattributed actions due to software errors. I made a note in my incident report and continued my shift. The rest of the night proceeded normally. The second occurrence was on February 7th. Again, the access log showed my badge unlocking the West Wing door, this time at 12:31 a.m. Again, I was elsewhere, conducting a perimeter check of the loading docks. I reviewed security camera footage from the West Wing corridor. The camera positioned 15 feet from the partition showed no movement during the timestamp in question. The chain link barrier remained closed and locked, yet the system insisted my badge had been used. I reported the issue to my supervisor, a man named Dale Brennan, who had worked hospital security for 16 years. He was methodical and skeptical of anything that disrupted routine. He reviewed the logs himself, cross-referencing my patrol data with the access records. He confirmed the discrepancy but attributed it to a database error, possibly caused by the hospital's recent software update. He filed a maintenance request with the IT department and told me to continue documenting any further irregularities. The third entry appeared on February 9th, 03:14 a.m., West Wing Access Point Alpha, badge accepted. I had been in the cafeteria on the first floor taking my mandated 30-minute break. The camera footage again showed no activity near the partition. What disturbed me was the pattern. The timestamps were not random. They corresponded to periods when I was alone, away from other staff, in sections of the hospital with limited camera coverage. It was as though something was using my badge only when I could not easily verify my own location. I began keeping a secondary log, a handwritten record of my exact position at 15-minute intervals throughout each shift. I noted the time, location, and any nearby witnesses. I wanted irrefutable proof of where I was when the system claimed otherwise. On February 12th, I decided to test a theory. At 1:45 a.m., I positioned myself directly in front of the West Wing partition with a clear view of the door in question. I stood motionless, watching the chain link and the darkness beyond. At 1:51 a.m., my radio crackled. The dispatcher asked me to respond to a non-emergency call on the third floor. A visitor was locked out of a patient room. I hesitated, then complied. The call took 8 minutes to resolve. When I returned to the security office at 2:11 a.m., the access log showed a new entry. 01:53 a.m., West Wing Access Point Alpha. Badge accepted. I had been gone for exactly 8 minutes. The timing was too precise to be coincidental. I reviewed the camera footage immediately. The West Wing corridor was empty during the timestamp. The chain link partition remained locked, but the digital log was absolute in its assertion. My badge had been used to unlock the door. I began to suspect that someone had cloned my credentials. Badge cloning was not common, but it was possible with the right equipment. Perhaps a former employee or a contractor with access to the security office had duplicated my badge data. But that did not explain why the cloned badge would only be used in a closed, unlit wing with no apparent purpose. There was nothing of value in the West Wing. No medications, no equipment, no patient records. Just empty offices and darkness. On February 15th, the entries increased in frequency. 3 separate timestamps, 00:41 a.m., 02:18 a.m., and 04:36 a.m., all at West Wing Access Point Alpha. All while I was elsewhere, I documented each one meticulously. Dale reviewed my reports again. He seemed less dismissive this time, though he offered no explanation. He contacted the IT department directly, demanding an audit of the access control system. They promised to investigate, but warned that a full diagnostic could take weeks. I began to dread my shifts, not because of fear, but because of the growing certainty that something was creating a record of actions I had not taken. The system was authoritative. It was trusted. If the log said I had unlocked a door, then institutionally I had unlocked it. My denials were irrelevant against time-stamped data. On February 19th, I decided to confront the impossibility directly. I would go into the West Wing. I obtained permission from Dale to unlock the partition for a full inspection. He was reluctant but agreed, noting that the repeated access anomalies justified a physical sweep of the area. He provided me with the master key and instructed me to document anything unusual. I unlocked the partition at 11:54 p.m. The chain link swung open with a metallic scrape that echoed down the corridor. Beyond, the West Wing was cold and dark. My flashlight beam cut through the stillness, illuminating empty desks, overturned chairs, and walls lined with outdated medical posters. The air smelled of dust and stale heating. I moved slowly, checking each office and conference room. Everything was as expected. Abandoned, untouched, mundane. I reached the main access door, the one the system claimed I had been unlocking. It was a standard electronic lock with a card reader. I swiped my badge. The indicator light blinked green. The lock disengaged with a soft click. I pushed the door open and stepped into the corridor beyond. The hallway extended 30 feet before terminating at a fire exit. Offices lined both sides. I checked each one. They were empty. No signs of intrusion. No evidence of recent activity. I returned to the main access door and examined the card reader itself. It appeared functional, undamaged. I stood there in the darkness, my flashlight the only source of illumination, and tried to understand what was happening. The system said I had been here multiple times, but I had not. Unless the timestamps were not recording when someone entered the West Wing. Unless they were recording when something inside acknowledged the presence of my badge elsewhere in the building. I returned to the security office at 1:32 a.m. The access log showed a new entry. 0111 a.m. West Wing Access Point Alpha badge accepted. I had been inside the West Wing at 1:11 a.m. For the first time, the log was accurate, but that was the first time I had actually entered. I reviewed the footage from the West Wing corridor camera. At 1:11 a.m., the camera showed me standing in front of the door, swiping my badge, entering. The footage was clear and unambiguous. I scrolled backward through the archived recordings. I selected February 12th, 1:53 a.m., the night I had been called away to the third floor. The camera showed the empty corridor. The partition was closed, no movement. And then, at exactly 1:53 a.m., the door opened from the inside. No one exited. The door simply swung inward as though someone inside had pushed it open. It remained ajar for 47 seconds, then closed itself. The lock re-engaged. I watched the recording 3 times. There was no visual evidence of a person, but the system had logged my badge access at that exact moment. I reviewed the footage from February 9th, 03:14 a.m. The same event. The door opened from within, no visible presence. The lock recorded my credentials. I checked every flagged timestamp. The pattern was identical. The door would open from the inside during my absence. The system would log my badge. The door would close. Something inside the West Wing was acknowledging my proximity to the building. Not by seeing me, but by recognizing the electronic signature of my badge as I moved through other areas. It was responding to my presence the way the access control system did, by logging, by authorizing, by following protocol. On February 23rd, I conducted another inspection of the West Wing. I went directly to the main access door and examined the interior handle. It was standard issue, operable from both sides. I tested it. It functioned normally. I walked the corridor again, slower this time, paying attention to details I might have missed. The offices were empty. The conference rooms were bare. But in the disused chapel at the far end of the wing, I found something. A desk had been moved into the center of the chapel, positioned beneath the dust-covered skylight. On the desk was a security logbook, the old paper kind that predated the digital system. It was open to a page dated February 2018, exactly 1 year prior. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The entries described routine patrols, identical to the ones I conducted. The guard's name was listed at the top of each page. Harold Voss. I did not recognize the name. I took a photograph of the logbook and returned to the security office. Dale confirmed that Harold Voss had worked overnight security at Mercy General. He had disappeared during his shift on February 27, 2018. No resignation. No explanation. His badge had been deactivated after 30 days of absence. The case had been reported to the police, but no evidence of foul play was ever found. He was simply gone. I asked Dale if Voss had reported any irregularities. Dale did not know. Personnel records from that period were archived off-site. I requested access to the archived security logs from February 2018. It took 4 days for the hospital to retrieve them. The logs showed the same pattern. Harold Voss's badge had been used to access the West Wing repeatedly during his final week, at times when his patrol records indicated he was elsewhere in the building. His last recorded badge swipe was at the West Wing access door, 02:43 a.m., February 27, 2018. The camera footage from that night no longer existed. The hospital's video retention policy was 90 days. I stopped conducting inspections of the West Wing. I resumed my standard patrols, but I began to notice something else. My own patrol logs were becoming difficult to verify. I would remember checking a specific floor at a specific time, but my badge data would show a different route. The discrepancies were minor, off by 5 or 10 minutes a floor transposed. Nothing egregious. Nothing that would trigger a supervisor's concern, but I knew my routine. I knew where I went and when. The system was now logging a version of my shift that I did not fully recognize. On March 3rd, Dale called me into his office. He reviewed my recent logs and noted that my patrol efficiency had improved significantly. I was covering more ground in less time, hitting checkpoints ahead of schedule, documenting inspections with unusual thoroughness. I told him I had not changed my routine. He showed me the data. According to the access control system, I was exceeding performance benchmarks. My badge was registering at locations I had not consciously visited, completing rounds I did not remember walking. I asked him if he believed the system over my account. He said the system does not lie. I requested a transfer to day shift. Dale denied it. Overnight security was understaffed. I was performing well. There was no justification for reassignment. On March 7th, I clocked in at 10:51 p.m. I completed my first patrol. At 1:38 a.m., I returned to the security office and reviewed the access logs. My badge had unlocked the West Wing door at 01:14 a.m. I checked the camera footage. The door had opened from the inside. This time, the footage showed a figure stepping out into the corridor. The image was grainy, backlit by the darkness of the West Wing, but the shape was unmistakable. A security guard. The uniform was identical to mine. The figure walked toward the camera, stopped directly beneath it, and looked up. The face was mine. The timestamp on the footage was 01:14 a.m. At that time, I had been on the 4th floor alone. I watched the figure turn and walk back into the West Wing. The door closed behind it. I have not entered the West Wing since, but my badge continues to unlock the door. The logs show entries every shift now, always when I am elsewhere, always following the same protocol I would follow if I were actually there. Dale no longer questions the discrepancies. The system recognizes my compliance. My performance reviews are exemplary. I do not know what is completing my rounds in the West Wing. I do not know if it believes it is me, or if it knows I am still outside walking other corridors, pretending the logs are wrong. I think about Harold Voss. I wonder if he stayed late one night to investigate just as I did. I wonder if he saw himself in the footage. I wonder if he tried to prove the system was mistaken. The hospital does not lose its security guards. It simply updates their assignments. Some protocols, I have learned, enforce themselves. Story 2. Camera 12, Nightshift. The monitor flickered once, twice, then went black. Camera 12, same as last January, same as the year before that. The maintenance request I was about to file already existed in the system, dated 3 weeks from now, marked resolved. I was hired as a CCTV monitoring officer for St. Jerome Medical Center in October of 2017. The hospital operated a centralized security monitoring station located in the basement, adjacent to the server room and facilities management. My responsibilities involved observing live feeds from 48 cameras distributed throughout the building, logging incidents, and coordinating with mobile patrol units when necessary. The shift was sedentary but required sustained attention. I worked alone from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 5 nights a week. The monitoring station was a windowless room approximately 12 feet by 15 feet, dominated by a wall of screens arranged in a 4x3 grid. Each screen could cycle through multiple camera feeds, though certain high-priority areas, emergency department entrance, pharmacy, intensive care units, remained on fixed displays. The console included controls for pan-tilt-zoom functions, playback access, and a direct radio link to patrol officers. A logbook application ran on a secondary monitor where I documented timestamps and descriptions of any notable activity. The work was largely uneventful. Most nights involved watching empty hallways, documenting the occasional maintenance worker, and noting the predictable routines of night staff. The hospital was a teaching facility, so residents and attending physicians moved through the corridors at irregular hours, often appearing exhausted under the fluorescent lighting. I learned to distinguish between normal activity and behavior worth reporting. The distinction was usually obvious. Camera 12 monitored the third-floor east corridor, a stretch of hallway connecting the surgical wing to the older maternity ward. The maternity ward had been decommissioned in 2012 due to budget constraints and declining birth rates in the county. The area was slated for renovation but remained unoccupied, used occasionally for storage. The corridor itself saw minimal traffic, primarily surgical residents taking a shortcut during overnight shifts. In January of 2018, Camera 12 began experiencing technical failures. The feed would freeze intermittently, displaying a static image for several seconds before resuming. Sometimes the image would pixelate, dissolving into blocky fragments of color before reconstituting. The failures occurred without pattern, often multiple times per shift, and always resolved on their own within minutes. I filed maintenance requests each time it happened. The hospital's IT contractor visited twice. Both times they tested the camera housing, inspected the cabling, and verified the network connection. Both times they found no hardware malfunction. They attributed the issue to environmental factors: temperature fluctuations, electromagnetic interference from nearby medical equipment. They recommended monitoring the situation. The failures continued. By late January, the disruptions had become routine. Camera 12 would freeze, I would note the time in my log, and the feed would restore itself. I stopped filing requests. The IT department had categorized the issue as low priority. The corridor was unoccupied. The camera's unreliability was an inconvenience, not a security risk. On February 9th, 2018, the pattern changed. At 1:23 a.m., Camera 12 froze as usual. The image locked on an empty corridor, lights dim, floor polished to a reflective sheen. I noted the time and continued monitoring the other feeds. 6 minutes later, the image remained frozen. This was longer than typical. I switched to the playback interface to verify whether the system was recording despite the display freeze. The playback showed that recording had continued uninterrupted. I selected the timestamp 1:23 a.m. and watched. The corridor was empty. At 1:24 a.m., a figure entered the frame from the left side, the direction of the surgical wing. The figure was indistinct, slightly out of focus, moving with a slow, deliberate gait. It appeared to be a man in hospital scrubs, though the image quality made details difficult to discern. The figure walked the length of the corridor, passing directly beneath the camera, and exited through the door to the decommissioned maternity ward. The timestamp read 1:25 a.m. I switched back to the live feed. Camera 12 was still frozen on the empty corridor, time-stamped 1:23 a.m. But according to the playback, 6 minutes had elapsed and someone had walked through. At 1:29 a.m., the live feed unfroze. The corridor was empty again. The lights, the floor, the walls, everything appeared exactly as it had at 1:23 a.m. There was no indication that anyone had passed through. I reviewed the playback a second time. The figure was there, clear as the low-resolution feed allowed. I could not identify the individual, but the movement was unmistakably human. I checked the adjacent cameras. No one appeared in the surgical wing or the stairwells that accessed the third floor during that window. The figure had seemingly materialized in the east corridor and vanished into the unused maternity ward. I documented the incident and flagged it for review by the day shift supervisor. I assumed it was a surgical resident unfamiliar with hospital layout, possibly lost or exploring restricted areas. The supervisor reviewed the footage the following day. He confirmed that someone had been in the corridor but noted that the maternity ward was accessible only with a key card. He checked the access logs. No key card had been used to unlock the ward entrance between midnight and 2 a.m. on February 9th. He instructed me to monitor camera 12 closely and report any further sightings. The figure appeared again on February 13th at 2:07 a.m. The same pattern. Camera 12 froze. The playback showed the figure walking the corridor and the live feed resumed with no evidence of passage. This time I observed more carefully. The figure moved with a slight limp, favoring the right leg. The gait was unhurried, almost methodical. When the figure passed beneath the camera, it paused. For approximately 11 seconds, it stood motionless in the center of the frame, facing the camera directly. The image resolution was insufficient to discern facial features, but the posture suggested awareness. Then the figure continued into the maternity ward. I checked the access logs again. No entry recorded. I radioed the mobile patrol officer and requested a physical check of the third floor east corridor. The officer arrived within 4 minutes. He found the corridor empty. The maternity ward door was locked. He tested it twice. The lock was engaged and functional. On February 17th, the figure appeared at 3:31 a.m. Same freeze, same corridor, same destination. But this time, the playback showed something additional. After the figure entered the maternity ward, the camera feed continued recording for another 8 minutes. At 3:39 a.m., the door to the ward opened from the inside. The figure emerged, walked back down the corridor, and exited frame left, returning toward the surgical wing. I switched immediately to the surgical wing cameras. No one appeared. I reviewed every camera with a view of possible routes from the third floor east corridor. The figure did not appear on any of them. It had walked into the frame, entered the ward, exited the ward, and vanished. I contacted the day shift supervisor again. He escalated the issue to hospital security management. They authorized a formal investigation. The maternity ward was inspected. The rooms were empty, dusty, untouched. The access logs were audited. No anomalies beyond the unexplained appearances in camera 12. The IT contractor was called back. They replaced the camera entirely, installing a new unit with updated firmware and higher resolution. They tested it extensively. It functioned perfectly. Camera 12 froze again on February 21st at 1:48 a.m. The new camera, same corridor, same freeze. The playback showed the figure entering at 1:49 a.m. This time, the higher resolution provided additional detail. The scrubs were faded, possibly stained. The figure's hands were empty. The gait was unchanged, slow, deliberate, limping. When the figure paused beneath the camera, I could see that its head was tilted upward, facing the lens directly. The face was obscured by shadow and poor lighting, but the posture was unmistakable. It was looking at me. I felt something then that I had not felt before. Not fear exactly, but a deep discomfort, the sensation of being observed in return. The figure entered the maternity ward. 8 minutes later, it emerged and walked back toward the surgical wing, disappearing as always. I began reviewing archived footage, searching for earlier appearances. I went back to January, then December. Camera 12's freezing issue had been noted in logs since January of 2016, 2 full years. I requested access to archived recordings from that period. The hospital retained video data for 90 days, then overwrote it. Older footage was not available unless it had been flagged and saved for a specific reason. I searched the flagged archive. There was one saved clip from January 2016 marked Equipment Malfunction Test. The clip was 43 seconds long. It showed the third floor east corridor, camera 12, time-stamped 02:11 a.m., January 19, 2016. The feed was frozen just like the recent occurrences, but someone had saved the clip, which meant someone had noticed the freeze and flagged it. I checked the log entry associated with the clip. The monitoring officer on duty that night had been a man named Kenneth Ruiz. I did not recognize the name. I asked my supervisor. Kenneth Ruiz had worked the overnight monitoring shift from August 2015 to March 2016. He had resigned without notice, no exit interview, no forwarding information. I asked if there had been any incidents associated with his resignation. My supervisor checked the personnel records. There was a note. Officer Ruiz reported recurring technical anomalies involving camera 12 and requested reassignment to different shift. Request denied due to staffing constraints. Officer subsequently resigned. I requested any incident reports filed by Ruiz during his tenure. There were 7. All involved camera 12. All described the same pattern: feed freeze, playback showing a figure in the corridor, no physical evidence upon inspection. The final report, dated March 4, 2016, included an additional note. Figure observed facing camera for extended duration. Appears aware of surveillance. Recommend immediate investigation. No investigation had been conducted. Ruiz resigned 8 days later. I began to notice something else. The freeze events were not random. They occurred at specific intervals. Always between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., always on nights when I was alone in the monitoring station, always when no other camera required immediate attention. It was as though camera 12 waited for my undivided focus. On March 1, 2018, I decided to remain silent during the next freeze. I would not radio patrol. I would not check other cameras. I would simply watch. At 2:34 a.m., camera 12 froze. I focused on the monitor, the empty corridor, the frozen timestamp. I switched to playback. The figure entered at 2:35 a.m. It walked the corridor. It stopped beneath the camera. It stood there, facing upward. The playback timer advanced, 2:36 a.m., 2:37 a.m. The figure did not move. It remained stationary, head tilted, posture rigid. At 2:38 a.m., something changed. The figure raised one hand slowly and pointed toward the camera. Not gesturing, not waving, pointing. The finger extended directly toward the lens, steady and deliberate. At 2:39 a.m., the live feed unfroze. The corridor was not empty. The figure stood directly beneath the camera in the exact position shown in the playback. It remained there for 3 seconds. Arm still raised, finger pointing upward. Then it lowered its hand and walked toward the maternity ward. The door opened. The figure entered. The door closed. I sat motionless, staring at the monitor. For the first time, the figure had appeared in both the playback and the live feed simultaneously. The freeze had not been a malfunction. It had been a delay. The system had been showing me what was about to happen before it occurred in real time. I checked the access logs. No keycard entry recorded for the maternity ward at 2:39 a.m. I radioed patrol. The officer arrived within 5 minutes. The corridor was empty. The maternity ward door was locked, but I had watched it happen. The figure had been there, visible on the live feed, physical and present. I reviewed the recording. The footage matched what I had observed. The figure appeared at 2:39 a.m., walked to the maternity ward and entered. The camera had recorded it. The data was there, time-stamped, verifiable. I filed an incident report. I described everything in precise detail. I attached the video file. The day shift supervisor reviewed it. He confirmed the footage showed someone in the corridor. He escalated it to hospital administration. They authorized a locksmith to inspect the maternity ward door. The lock was examined. It had not been tampered with. It was functioning as designed. They changed the lock anyway. A new electronic lock requiring updated key cards that only senior administrators possessed. Camera 12 froze again on March 6th at 1:52 a.m. The playback showed the figure entering at 1:53 a.m. It approached the maternity ward door. It paused. Then it opened the door, the new lock, the door that required a key card, and entered without swiping any credential. At 1:54 a.m., the live feed unfroze. The corridor was empty. I reported it immediately. The access log showed no entry. The new lock had not been disengaged electronically, yet the footage clearly showed the door opening. Security management convened a meeting. They reviewed all reports, all footage, all maintenance records related to camera 12. They consulted with the IT contractor, the locksmith, and the hospital's risk management team. Their conclusion: the camera system was experiencing a software glitch that superimposed archived or corrupted footage onto live feeds, creating the illusion of a figure in the corridor. The timing of the freezes and unfreezes was coincidental. The apparent awareness of the figure was pareidolia, my mind assigning intentionality to a visual artifact. They recommended psychological evaluation for any monitoring officer who reported similar experiences. I was placed on administrative leave pending evaluation. I completed the evaluation. The psychologist found no evidence of impairment. I was cleared to return to duty. I returned to the monitoring station on March 19th. Camera 12 froze at 2:18 a.m. I did not switch to playback. I did not watch the monitor. I focused on the logbook, documenting the freeze as a technical issue, nothing more. At 2:24 a.m., my radio crackled. The patrol officer's voice came through, tense and uncertain. "Monitoring, this is Patrol Unit 3. I'm on 3rd floor East Corridor, requesting clarification." I responded. "Unit 3, go ahead." "Monitoring, I just observed an individual entering the maternity ward. Male, hospital scrubs, walking with a limp. Door opened without keycard. I'm at the door now, it's locked, requesting backup." I felt my pulse accelerate. "Unit 3, can you confirm visual identification of individual?" "Negative. I saw him enter, but when I reached the door, it was already locked. No time for him to secure it from inside." The door doesn't lock automatically. I checked camera 12. The live feed was still frozen. I instructed Unit 3 to wait for backup. I radioed for a second patrol officer and notified the supervisor. 2 officers converged on the maternity ward. They unlocked the door and conducted a room-by-room search. The ward was empty. No signs of occupancy. No alternate exits. The first officer was adamant. He had seen someone enter. He provided a description that matched the figure in the footage. Male, scrubs, right leg limp, deliberate movements. Security management reviewed the incident. They reviewed camera 12's footage. The freeze had occurred at 2:18 a.m. The playback showed the figure entering at 2:19 a.m. exactly as the patrol officer described. For the first time, someone other than a monitoring officer had witnessed the figure. The hospital commissioned an independent security audit. Consultants specializing in surveillance systems arrived in April. They examined every component of the CCTV network, analyzed software logs, tested for signal interference, and interviewed staff. They found no technical explanation for the phenomena. The equipment was functioning correctly. The footage was genuine, not corrupted or fabricated. The freeze events were real, but their cause was indeterminate. The consultants recommended replacing the entire camera system. The cost was prohibitive. Administration declined. Instead, they reassigned camera 12's feed to a secondary monitor, separating it from the main grid. They instructed monitoring officers to check it periodically, but not to focus on it continuously. The freezes continued, but they were no longer logged as incidents. They were accepted as a quirk of the system. I continued my shifts. I watched the other cameras, maintained the logs, coordinated with patrol. I checked camera 12 only when required. On May 3rd at 3:06 a.m., I glanced at the secondary monitor. Camera 12 was frozen. The corridor was empty as always. But superimposed on the frozen image, barely visible, was text. White letters, semi-transparent, rendered in the same font the system used for timestamps. The text read, "Monitoring observed." I stared at the screen. The words remained for approximately 20 seconds, then faded. The feed unfroze. The corridor was empty. I did not report it. I knew what the conclusion would be. Visual artifact. Stress. Pareidolia. But I understood. The system was not malfunctioning. It was communicating. Camera 12 froze again on May 9th. The text appeared again, different this time. Playback confirms presence. I switched to playback. The figure was there, walking the corridor as always, entering the maternity ward. On May 16th, live feed will synchronize. On May 23rd, observer will comply. I stopped checking camera 12. I disabled the secondary monitor, claiming it was a distraction. My supervisor approved the decision, but I could not avoid it entirely. Incident reports from patrol officers continued. Sightings in the 3rd floor east corridor. A figure in scrubs walking with a limp entering the maternity ward. The door always locked when they arrived. The ward always empty. The sightings increased in frequency, once a week, twice a week, then nightly. On June 7th, I was reviewing archived footage for an unrelated incident when I noticed something in the metadata. The playback files for camera 12 had a secondary timestamp embedded in the code, a future timestamp always 3 weeks ahead of the recording date. I compared this to other cameras. The anomaly was unique to camera 12. The system was not recording what had happened. It was recording what would happen. On June 14th at 2:41 a.m., I received a radio call from a patrol officer I did not recognize. His voice was calm, professional. Monitoring, this is Unit 7, conducting rounds on 3rd floor East Corridor. Camera 12 shows my position, correct? I checked. Camera 12 was frozen. I responded. Unit 7, Camera 12 is currently offline. I cannot verify your position visually. Understood, monitoring. I'll proceed to the maternity ward for inspection. I felt a sudden, instinctive alarm. Unit 7, negative. Hold your position. The maternity ward is not part of standard patrol. There was a pause. Then, monitoring, my assignment indicates otherwise. Proceeding as instructed. Unit 7, who authorized your assignment? You did, monitoring. The log shows your approval, time-stamped June 7th, 03:15 a.m. I checked the digital logbook. There was an entry dated June 7th, 03:15 a.m. bearing my user credentials. It authorized expanded patrol routes to include the decommissioned maternity ward. I had not created that entry. Unit 7, disregard that authorization. It was not issued by me. Exit the 3rd floor immediately. No response. I switched camera 12's feed to the main monitor. It was still frozen. I accessed playback. The footage showed a patrol officer approaching the maternity ward door. The timestamp read 2:43 a.m., 2 minutes in the future. The officer swiped a key card. The door unlocked. He entered. At 2:43 a.m., the live feed unfroze. The patrol officer stood at the maternity ward entrance. He swiped his key card. The door unlocked. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him. I radioed him immediately. No response. I dispatched 2 additional units to the 3rd floor. They arrived within 3 minutes. They found the maternity ward door locked. They unlocked it and entered. The officer was gone. The ward was empty. No alternate exits. No sign of forced egress. The officer's radio was found on the floor of the first room, still powered on, transmitting silence. A full search was conducted. The officer was not found. His name was listed in the personnel system. Officer Marcus Hendry, hired May 29, 2018. But no one in the security department recognized him. No hiring records existed, no interview notes, no badge photograph. The only documentation was his assignment log, created on June 7th at 03:15 a.m., under my credentials and the footage from camera 12. I was placed on immediate administrative leave. An internal investigation was launched. They audited my system access, reviewed my logs, interviewed my colleagues. They concluded that I had fabricated the incident. The footage of Officer Hendry was dismissed as a hoax or a glitch. The personnel entry was attributed to a database error. I was terminated on June 30th, 2018. I have not worked in security since, but I still receive notifications from the hospital's monitoring system, emails time-stamped weeks in advance, informing me of incidents that have not yet occurred, alerts about figures in corridors, unauthorized entries, officers who do not exist in any record except the ones the system creates for them. The most recent email arrived this morning. It contained a single line of text. Camera 12 requires monitoring. Your shift begins in 21 days. I do not work there anymore. I have not worked there in years. But the system insists otherwise. Some footage, I have learned, records the observer as closely as the observed. Story 3, the stairwell between floors. The radio crackled at 3:47 a.m. My own voice came through, calm and procedural, reporting my position as stairwell B, level 2.5. I was standing in the lobby. There is no level 2.5. I was employed as a mobile patrol security officer at Whitmore County Hospital from March of 2020 through the winter of 2021. The position required continuous movement throughout the facility, conducting visual inspections of corridors, stairwells, parking structures, and restricted areas on a fixed rotation. Each patrol cycle took approximately 90 minutes to complete. I worked the overnight shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., alone except for a dispatcher who monitored radio communications from a central office. The hospital was a sprawling complex built in phases over 6 decades. The original structure dated to 1963 with additions in the 70s, 90s, and 2000s. The result was an architecturally inconsistent building with mismatched floor heights, redundant stairwells, and corridors that terminated without clear purpose. Navigation required familiarity. New employees routinely became disoriented during their first months. Stairwell B was located in the oldest section connecting the basement to the 4th floor. It was constructed of poured concrete with metal handrails, painted institutional beige, and lit by caged fluorescent fixtures. The stairwell saw little use. Most staff preferred the main elevators or the newer glass-enclosed stairwell in the south wing. Stairwell B's doors were heavy, self-closing, and equipped with electronic locks that disengaged during fire alarms. My patrol route required me to enter at the basement level, ascend to the 4th floor, and exit into the surgical wing. The stairwell was unremarkable. I climbed it dozens of times without incident. The anomaly began on December 8, 2020. I entered Stairwell B at the basement level at 2:31 a.m. The door closed behind me with its usual metallic thud. I began ascending. The stairs were cold, the concrete slightly damp from condensation. My footsteps echoed in the narrow shaft. I counted the floors as I climbed. Basement to 1st floor landing, 1st to 2nd, 2nd to 3rd, 3rd to 4th. Between the 2nd and 3rd floor landings, the lighting changed. The fluorescent fixtures dimmed, their stark white glow softening to a pale amber. The color temperature shifted, became warmer, almost sepia-toned. I paused mid-step and looked up. The fixtures themselves appeared unchanged, but the quality of light was distinctly different. I continued climbing. The 3rd floor landing seemed farther than usual. My legs registered the additional exertion, though the incline of the stairs remained constant. When I finally reached the landing, I checked my watch. 4 minutes had elapsed since entering the stairwell. Normally, the ascent from basement to 4th floor took 2 minutes at most. I exited into the 4th floor corridor. Everything appeared normal. Polished linoleum, numbered patient rooms, the faint scent of disinfectant. I continued my patrol without reporting the discrepancy. I assumed I had simply climbed more slowly than usual, distracted or fatigued. 2 nights later, on December 10th, I entered Stairwell B again at 2:35 a.m. The lighting dimmed between the 2nd and 3rd floors just as before. I paid closer attention this time. The change occurred precisely at the midpoint between landings, where a small horizontal window was set into the exterior wall. The window was frosted, designed to admit diffused daylight during day shifts. At night, it should have been black, but as I passed it, I noticed a faint glow beyond the glass, as though illuminated by an external source. I stopped and examined the window. The frosted panes obscured any clear view, but the glow was unmistakable, soft, steady, amber-hued. I pressed my face close to the glass and shielded my eyes. I could discern no detail, only the diffuse light. I continued climbing. Again, the 3rd floor landing felt farther. Again, my watch showed nearly 4 minutes elapsed. When I exited on the 4th floor, I radioed the dispatcher. "Dispatch, this is Mobile Unit 1, confirming exterior lighting status on east side, floors 2 through 3. The dispatcher responded, "Unit 1, no exterior lighting scheduled for that section. Perimeter lights are on standard timer. Is there a malfunction? Possible light source visible from Stairwell B window. Requesting maintenance check. Copy Unit 1. I'll log the request." I completed my patrol and returned to the security office at shift end. I reviewed the maintenance log. No exterior work was scheduled near Stairwell B. The hospital's east side faced an empty lot used for overflow parking. There were no street lights. No neighboring structures, no reason for illumination at that location. Maintenance inspected the area the following day. They found no evidence of external lighting. The window in stairwell B was examined. It faced a brick wall approximately 8 feet away, part of a gap between the original building and a 1970s addition. The space was inaccessible, too narrow for personnel, containing only ductwork and old piping. There was no light source. On December 15th, I entered stairwell B at 2:41 a.m. As I climbed past the second-floor landing, the lighting dimmed. The amber glow appeared in the frosted window. I stopped at the midpoint and tested something. I descended 3 steps back toward the second floor. The lighting returned to normal, stark white fluorescence. I ascended again. The amber glow resumed. I continued upward. As before, the distance to the third-floor landing felt extended. But this time, I counted my steps aloud. From the second-floor landing to the third-floor landing should have been 28 steps, the same as every other flight in the stairwell. I counted 41 steps before reaching the third floor. I stopped on the landing and radioed dispatch. Dispatch, Unit 1, confirming stairwell B structural integrity. Unit 1, please clarify. Stairwell B, floors 2 to 3. Requesting verification of step count and landing positions. There was a pause. Unit 1, is there a safety concern? Possible anomaly. I'd like facilities to verify dimensions. Copy. I'll escalate to day shift management. I exited the stairwell and completed my patrol. The rest of the night was uneventful. Facilities management reviewed the request the next day. They declined to inspect stairwell B, citing that the structure had passed its most recent safety inspection in October. The step count I reported was attributed to miscounting under low-light conditions. I decided to document the phenomenon myself. On December 19th, I brought a measuring tape and a digital camera. I entered stairwell B at 2:38 a.m. I ascended to the second-floor landing and measured the height of the stairwell shaft above me using the tape extended vertically along the wall. The distance to the visible ceiling above the third-floor landing measured approximately 12 feet, standard for this type of construction. I began climbing. The lighting dimmed. The amber glow appeared in the window. I stopped at the midpoint and measured again. The ceiling above the third-floor landing now appeared to be approximately 18 feet above me. That was impossible. I had not descended. I was higher on the staircase than during my first measurement. I took a photograph of the tape measure against the wall, showing the extended length. I continued climbing. I counted 43 steps this time before reaching the third-floor landing. I measured the height from the third-floor landing down to the visible floor of the second-floor landing below. 14 feet. The standard height between floors in this building was 10 feet. I photographed the measurements and exited the stairwell. When I reviewed the photographs later, they showed only darkness. The images were severely underexposed, as though taken in near total blackness, despite the stairwell's functioning lights. The measuring tape was invisible. I reported the findings to my supervisor, a man named Clayton Pierce, who had worked hospital security for 22 years. He reviewed my account with skepticism, but agreed to accompany me on a patrol to verify the anomaly. On December 22nd, Clayton and I entered stairwell B together at 2:51 a.m. We ascended from the basement. The lighting remained normal, white, bright, consistent. We reached the second floor, then continued toward the third. No dimming occurred. No amber glow appeared. We counted the steps together. 28 steps, exactly as expected. We exited on the fourth floor. Clayton asked if I had been drinking or using medication that might affect perception. I assured him I had not. He suggested I take a few nights off. I declined. I entered stairwell B alone again on December 26th at 2:23 a.m. The dimming occurred. The amber glow appeared. I counted 46 steps between the second and third floors. At the midpoint, I stopped and examined the frosted window more closely. I noticed something I had not seen before. The glow beyond the glass was not uniform. It contained shadow, movement perhaps, or the suggestion of structure. I pressed my face against the cold glass and tried to discern detail. For a moment, I thought I saw a landing. Not the third-floor landing above me, but another landing parallel to my position, visible through the frosted panes as though the window opened onto a mirrored stairwell shaft. I pulled back. That made no sense. Stairwell B was built against an exterior wall. There was no adjacent shaft. I continued climbing. When I reached the third-floor landing, I noticed something new. A door. Stairwell B had doors at each floor landing, basement, first, second, third, fourth. But this door was positioned between the third-floor landing and the fourth-floor landing, set into the wall where no door should exist. The door was identical to the others, heavy, windowless, painted the same institutional beige. A small placard was mounted at eye level. The placard read, Level 2.5. I stared at the placard. There was no level 2.5. The hospital's floors were numbered sequentially, basement 1, 2, 3, 4. I reached for the door handle. It was locked. I swiped my security badge against the card reader mounted beside the frame. The indicator light remained red. Access denied. I radioed dispatch. Dispatch Unit 1, requesting clarification on Stairwell B door designation. Unit 1, go ahead. Stairwell B door marked level 2.5, requesting information on access authorization. There was a long pause. Unit 1, please repeat. Did you say level 2.5? Affirmative. Door is present between floors 3 and 4. Placard reads level 2.5. Unit 1. There is no level 2.5 in facility records. Please confirm your location. Stairwell B, between 3rd and 4th floor landings. Unit 1, stand by. I waited. The stairwell was silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. The dispatcher returned. Unit 1, Facilities Management confirms no intermediate level exists in Stairwell B. Please exit the stairwell and report to Security Office for debriefing. I acknowledged and continued climbing to the 4th floor. I exited and proceeded to the security office. Clayton was waiting. He asked me to describe exactly what I had seen. I did. He reviewed the facility blueprints on his computer. The architectural plans showed Stairwell B as a straight vertical shaft with 5 landings. Basement 1, 2, 3, 4. No intermediate levels, no additional doors. He asked if I was certain about the placard. I was. He decided to investigate personally. We returned to Stairwell B together at 3:47 a.m. We entered at the basement level and climbed. The lighting remained normal. At the 2nd floor, I pointed out where the dimming usually occurred. Nothing changed. We continued to the 3rd floor. I indicated where the door should be. There was no door, only smooth concrete wall. Clayton examined the wall carefully. No seams, no evidence of a sealed doorway. He asked if I was absolutely certain of the location. I was. We exited the stairwell. Clayton suggested I submit to a fitness for duty evaluation. I agreed. I was evaluated by the hospital's occupational health physician on December 28th. The assessment included cognitive tests, vision screening, and a basic neurological exam. Results were normal. I was cleared to continue duty. I avoided Stairwell B for the next week using alternate routes during patrols. On January 5, 2021, dispatch radioed me at 3:33 a.m. Unit 1, we're receiving a check-in signal from your radio indicating your position is Stairwell B, level 2.5. I was in the main lobby, nowhere near stairwell B. Dispatch, that's incorrect. I'm currently in the main lobby. I have not entered stairwell B tonight. Unit 1, our system shows your last badge swipe at stairwell B, third floor access, at 0328. Current position tracking indicates level 2.5. Dispatch, I have not been in stairwell B. My last badge swipe was the staff lounge on the first floor at 0319. Unit 1, please verify your badge is in your possession. I checked. My badge was clipped to my belt. Badge is secure. Unit 1, stand by. I waited. 2 minutes later, dispatch contacted me again. Unit 1, please proceed to stairwell B and conduct a physical inspection. We're showing continuous position tracking at level 2.5, but no visual confirmation on cameras. Copy, dispatch. I walked to stairwell B and entered at the first floor. I climbed to the third floor. The lighting remained normal. No amber glow, no additional door. I radioed dispatch. Dispatch, Unit 1. Stairwell B appears normal, no anomalies observed. Unit 1, tracking still shows your position at level 2.5. Dispatch, I'm standing on the third floor landing. No level 2.5 exists here. Unit 1, understood. Please exit and return to patrol. We'll troubleshoot the tracking system. I exited and continued my rounds. At 4:12 a.m., dispatch radioed again. Unit 1, tracking has corrected. Your position now shows accurately. Copy, dispatch. But as I acknowledged, I heard something else on the radio. A brief transmission lasting perhaps 2 seconds. It was my own voice, calm and procedural, stating, Unit 1, level 2.5, all clear. I had not transmitted that. Dispatch, did you receive a transmission from me just now? Affirmative, Unit 1. You reported level 2.5, all clear. Dispatch, I did not send that transmission. There was a pause. Unit 1. The transmission originated from your radio ID. Please confirm your radio is functioning properly. I examined my radio. It appeared normal. The transmit button had not been pressed. Radio appears functional. I did not key the mic. Copy, Unit 1. We'll log the discrepancy. I completed my shift without further incident. On January 9th at 3:47 a.m., I entered stairwell B deliberately. I needed to understand what was happening. The lighting dimmed between the second and third floors. The amber glow returned to the frosted window. I climbed slowly, counting steps. 48 this time. The door marked level 2.5 was present again. I approached it. The card reader glowed faintly red. I swiped my badge. The light turned green. The lock disengaged with a soft click. I pulled the door open. Beyond was another landing, identical to the others in the stairwell. Concrete floor, metal handrail, beige walls. But the space felt wrong, too quiet. The air pressure noticeably different, as though stepping into a sealed chamber. A second door was visible on the opposite wall, presumably leading into the hospital. I crossed the landing and tried that door. It was unlocked. I opened it. The corridor beyond was dimly lit and unfamiliar. The floor was carpeted, not linoleum. The walls were painted a faded green. Room numbers were visible on doors lining the hallway, but they did not correspond to any numbering system I recognized. The placard nearest to me read, Room 2.5A. I stepped into the corridor. It extended approximately 60 feet before terminating at a nurse's station. The station was unoccupied. Papers were scattered across the desk. A computer monitor displayed a screensaver. An old CRT model, not the flat panel screens used throughout the hospital. I approached the desk. The papers were patient charts, handwritten, dated December 1996. I heard a sound behind me, a footstep, soft but distinct. I turned. A figure stood in the corridor approximately 30 feet away. It was a security guard wearing a uniform similar to mine but slightly different in cut and color. The guard's face was obscured by shadow. The figure did not move or speak. It simply stood there watching. I raised my hand in a cautious greeting. The figure did not respond. I heard my radio crackle, the dispatcher's voice distant and distorted. Unit 1, your position is showing level 2.5. Please confirm status. I keyed the mic. Dispatch, I hesitated. I'm investigating level 2.5. Copy, Unit 1. Do you require assistance? The figure in the corridor took a step forward. Dispatch, stand by. I backed toward the stairwell door. The figure advanced slowly, deliberately. As it moved into better lighting, I saw its face. It was mine. The same features, the same build, the same uniform. But the expression was blank, the eyes fixed and unblinking. I retreated through the door into the stairwell landing. I pulled the door shut and descended the stairs rapidly. The lighting returned to normal as I passed the second floor. I exited at the first floor and radioed dispatch immediately. Dispatch, Unit 1, exiting stairwell B. I need to speak with a supervisor immediately. Copy, Unit 1. Clayton met me in the security office 15 minutes later. I described everything. The door, the corridor, the outdated nurse's station, the figure. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he asked a single question. Did the figure follow you? I realized I did not know. I had not looked back. Clayton accessed the hospital's archived personnel records. He searched for security officers employed in December 1996. There were 3. One was still employed working day shift. One had retired. The third was a man named Andrew Carver, who had disappeared during an overnight shift on December 24, 1996. Carver's last radio transmission had been logged at 3:47 a.m. He reported his position as Stairwell B, conducting a routine patrol. He was never seen again. A search was conducted. Stairwell B was inspected thoroughly. No evidence of foul play or accident was found. Carver was simply gone. The case remained unsolved. Clayton showed me Carver's ID photograph from the personnel file. The resemblance was superficial but present. Similar height, similar build. But it was not me. I don't think you saw Carver, Clayton said quietly. I think you saw someone else. Who? I think you saw whoever replaces you. I did not return to Stairwell B. I requested a route modification that excluded it from my patrol. The request was denied. Stairwell B was a required checkpoint. On January 14th at 3:47 a.m., my radio transmitted automatically. I did not key the mic. The transmission was my voice, stating, Unit 1, Level 2.5, all clear. Dispatch acknowledged without question. It has continued every night since. At 3:47 a.m., my radio reports my position as Level 2.5. I am never there. I am always somewhere else in the hospital, conducting patrols on floors that exist in blueprints and memory. But the system insists I am completing rounds on a level that should not be there. I submitted my resignation on January 28, 2021. It was not processed. Human Resources informed me that my employment record showed continued active duty. My badge remains functional. My radio ID continues to check in. I have not entered the hospital since February 1st, but I still receive my paycheck. I still see my schedule posted in the online portal. And every night at 3:47 a.m. somewhere in Whitmore County Hospital, a radio transmission in my voice confirms that Level 2.5 is secure. The hospital does not lose its guards. It simply assigns them to floors that were never built but have always needed patrol. Some stairwells, I have learned, do not connect floors. They connect versions. Story 4. Unclaimed badge, Sub-Zero night. The badge was frozen into the pavement, encased in ice an inch thick. The photo was mine. The name was mine. But the issue date was 3 years before I was born. I worked as an emergency department security guard at River Point Medical Center from November of 2019 through March of 2020. The position required a stationary presence at the ED entrance, managing access control, de-escalating agitated visitors, and coordinating with clinical staff during violent or psychiatric incidents. The shifts were 12 hours, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 3 nights per week. The work was demanding but straightforward. I was responsible for a single location, a single set of doors, and the immediate safety of everyone who passed through them. The emergency department was located on the ground floor of the hospital's north wing, accessible via a covered ambulance bay and a separate pedestrian entrance. The bay was a concrete expanse approximately 60 feet wide, heated during winter months by overhead radiant units that struggled against the Minnesota cold. During particularly severe weather, ice would form in thin sheets across the pavement despite the heating elements. Maintenance spread salt and sand regularly, but the freeze line advanced each January, creeping closer to the building itself. Winter in northern Minnesota is unforgiving. Temperatures routinely dropped below 0 Fahrenheit during overnight shifts. The wind off the river carried a penetrating cold that made outdoor exposure dangerous after minutes. Ambulances arrived continuously, their exhaust forming clouds of vapor that hung in the frigid air. Paramedics moved quickly, wheeling gurneys through the automatic doors with practiced urgency. Their breath visible in the gap between the bay and the building's warmth. I began noticing the badge on January 12, 2020. I arrived for my shift at 6:51 p.m. and parked in the staff lot adjacent to the ambulance bay. The temperature was -4 degrees Fahrenheit, the sky clear and black, stars visible despite the hospital's exterior lighting. I crossed the lot toward the ED entrance, my boots crunching on salt-treated pavement. Approximately 20 feet from the entrance, I saw something embedded in the ice near the ambulance approach lane. I stopped and crouched to examine it. It was a security badge, frozen into the pavement. The badge was standard issue, rectangular plastic card, hospital logo, magnetic strip on the back, but it was encased in ice, sealed beneath a smooth, clear layer approximately 1 inch thick. The ice was not rough or fractured, but rather looked as though it had melted and refrozen deliberately around the badge, preserving it. The photograph on the badge showed a man in his 30s, dark hair, clean-shaven. The name printed below read, Evan Torrance, Security Officer. The issue date, visible in small text at the bottom, was June 4, 2015. I did not recognize the name. I made a mental note to inquire about it and continued inside. The shift began normally. Check-ins, visitor management, a psych evaluation that required my presence for patient safety. I forgot about the badge. At 11:33 p.m. during a lull, I asked the charge nurse if she recognized the name Evan Torrance. She did not. I described finding the badge in the ice. She suggested I report it to my supervisor or lost and found. I radioed my supervisor, a woman named Gail Hendricks, who oversaw security operations for the entire facility. She told me to retrieve the badge when possible and return it to the security office for deactivation. At 2:41 a.m. during my break, I went outside with a flashlight and an ice scraper from my car. The temperature had dropped to -9 degrees. The wind was brutal. I located the badge easily. It was exactly where I had seen it earlier. I knelt and attempted to chip away the ice surrounding it. The ice was dense, resistant. After several minutes of scraping, I managed to expose the edges of the badge, but it remained firmly frozen to the pavement. The cold was becoming painful. I gave up and returned inside. I reported to Gail that the badge was frozen solid and would require maintenance tools to extract. She logged the information and said she would assign someone to retrieve it during daylight hours. I did not think about it again until January 16th. I arrived for my shift at 6:48 p.m. The temperature was minus 11 degrees. As I crossed the parking lot, I glanced toward the location where the badge had been frozen. It was still there, but the ice around it had thickened. The badge was now encased in what appeared to be 2 or 3 inches of clear ice, even though the surrounding pavement was dry and salted. I stopped and examined it again. The badge itself looked identical, same photo, same name, same date, but the ice was undeniably thicker than it had been 4 days prior. I went inside and radioed Gail. She confirmed that maintenance had been notified but had not yet retrieved the badge due to weather-related staffing shortages. She said it was low priority. I asked if she could look up Evan Torrance in the personnel database. She agreed. 15 minutes later, she radioed back. Evan Torrance was employed as a security officer from June 2015 to March 2016, resigned without notice. No forwarding information. Any incident reports associated with him? I asked. Nothing flagged. Standard resignation protocol. Why? Just curious. The badge has been frozen in the ice for at least 4 days, and no one seems to have noticed it before. It happens. Badges get dropped in parking lots all the time. We'll retrieve it when maintenance has availability. I accepted the explanation, but something felt wrong. Badges did not freeze into pavement in perfect, clear ice. Ice formed rough, uneven, fractured. The ice surrounding Torrance's badge looked deliberate, almost preserved. On January 21st, I arrived at 6:53 p.m. The temperature was minus 6 degrees. I checked the badge. The ice was thicker still, perhaps 4 inches now, forming a raised dome above the pavement. The badge itself was perfectly visible, perfectly centered, as though someone had carefully positioned it and then poured water over it to freeze in layers. I photographed it with my phone. The image showed the badge clearly, the ice glistening under my flashlight beam. Inside, I asked the veteran ED nurse, a man named Keith Robles, who had worked at River Point for 18 years, if he remembered Evan Torrance. Keith thought for a moment. Name sounds familiar. Security, you said? Yeah. Worked here 2015 to 2016. I remember an officer named Evan, quiet guy. Worked nights mostly. I think he left kind of suddenly, don't recall details. Do you remember anything unusual about him? Keith shook his head. Not really. He did his job. Why? I explained about the badge. Keith seemed mildly interested but offered no insights. On January 27th, I arrived to find the ice dome over the badge had grown to approximately 6 inches high. The badge was still clearly visible at the center, perfectly preserved. The surrounding pavement showed no similar ice formations. The radiant heaters overhead were functioning, yet the ice continued to accumulate, localized entirely around the badge. I reported it to Gail again. She sounded annoyed. Maintenance is aware, it'll be addressed. It's been 2 weeks, I said. The ice is getting thicker, not thinner. It's winter. Ice happens. This isn't normal ice. What do you want me to say? It's a frozen badge. It's not a security threat. I let it go. On February 2nd, the temperature reached minus 18 degrees, the coldest night of the winter. I arrived at 6:50 p.m., bundled in layers, my breath freezing before it could dissipate. The ice dome over the badge was now approximately 8 inches high, a smooth, rounded formation that caught the amber glow of the parking lot lights. It looked almost intentional, like a marker or a memorial. I approached it slowly, my boots slipping slightly on the surrounding pavement. I knelt beside it and shone my flashlight directly onto the badge. The photograph had changed. The face in the badge was still Evan Torrance, but the expression was different. In the previous photos I had taken, his face had been neutral, standard ID photo. Now the expression looked pained, the eyes slightly widened, the mouth set in a tense line. I pulled out my phone and compared it to the photograph I had taken on January 21st. They were different. That was impossible. A frozen badge could not change. The ice had not thawed and refrozen, it had only grown, yet the face in the photograph had shifted. I took a new photograph and went inside immediately. I showed it to Keith, then pulled up the older photo for comparison. Keith stared at both images. "That's weird." "It's the same badge," I said. "Frozen in ice for 3 weeks, but the face changed." Keith had no explanation. Neither did I. At 3:14 a.m. during my patrol of the ambulance bay perimeter, I checked the badge again. I knelt beside the ice dome, shining my flashlight onto it. The face had changed again. This time the eyes were closed. The mouth was open slightly, as though gasping. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. I took another photograph and returned inside. I radioed Gail and requested she come to the ED immediately. She arrived at 3:51 a.m., visibly irritated. I led her outside and showed her the badge. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "The badge, the face. Compare it to the photo from earlier." She examined my phone screen, then looked at the badge. "They look the same to me." "No, the expression is different. It's changed 3 times tonight." She stared at me. "You're telling me a frozen photograph is moving?" "I'm telling you something is wrong," she sighed. "Look, you've been out here in sub-zero cold for hours. You're seeing things that aren't there. Go inside, warm up, take your break." "I'm not imagining this." "Then you need to file an incident report and let me handle it. But right now you're fixated on a piece of plastic in the ice, and I need you focused on the ED." I returned inside. I did not file a report. I knew how it would be received. On February 8th, I arrived at 6:54 p.m. The temperature was -14 degrees. The ice dome over the badge had grown to nearly 12 inches high. It was now taller than my boot, a frozen monument in the center of the ambulance bay approach lane. Ambulances had begun driving around it. I asked the paramedics if they had noticed it. They had. One of them, a woman named Shayna, said she had reported it to hospital facilities. They had told her it would be removed when feasible. "It's been there for almost a month," she said. "It's like they're just ignoring it." I agreed. That night at 2:47 a.m. I went outside during a quiet period and approached the ice dome again. I knelt beside it, flashlight in hand. The badge was face down now. I had seen it face up earlier in the shift. The photograph had been visible. Now the back of the badge was showing, the magnetic strip, the plain white plastic. The badge had flipped over inside the ice. I stared at it for a long time, trying to understand. Ice does not move. Frozen objects do not reposition themselves. Yet the badge was now inverted. I returned inside and accessed the security office computer. I searched the personnel database for Evan Torrance. His employee record was minimal. Hired June 2015, resigned March 2016, no incident flags. I expanded the search to hospital incident reports during his tenure. There were none filed under his name. But I searched by date, March 2016, and found something. An incident report filed by the Nightshift ED charge nurse on March 7, 2016. The report described an unresponsive individual found in the ambulance bay at approximately 4:32 a.m. The individual was transported to the ED, pronounced dead at 4:59 a.m. Cause of death, hypothermia. The individual's name was Evan Torrance. He had not resigned, he had died. I felt my pulse accelerate. I continued reading. The report noted that Torrance had been found lying on the pavement near the ambulance approach lane, approximately 20 feet from the ED entrance. He was still wearing his security uniform. No coat, no hat. The temperature that night had been minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. The circumstances were ruled accidental, possible medical emergency leading to collapse, exacerbated by extreme cold. No suspicious activity, no witnesses. The report ended with a note. Officer's badge not recovered at scene, presumed lost. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. The badge had been there the entire time. Frozen into the pavement where Evan Torrance had died. For 4 years it had been there, buried under snow and ice each winter. Invisible until someone noticed. Until I noticed. On February 14th, I arrived at 6:49 p.m. The ice dome had grown to nearly 15 inches high. It dominated the ambulance bay, impossible to ignore. I approached it and knelt. The badge was face up again. The photograph showed Evan Torrance with his eyes open, staring directly into the camera. I took a photograph and went inside. At 3:38 a.m., my radio crackled. The dispatcher's voice came through. ED Security, we have a report of an individual lying in the ambulance bay. Paramedics en route, please respond. I grabbed my coat and went outside immediately. An ambulance was pulling into the bay, lights flashing. The paramedics exited quickly, moving toward a figure lying on the pavement near the ice dome. I approached. The figure was a man dressed in a security uniform identical to mine. No coat, no hat. He was lying face down, motionless. The paramedics knelt beside him, checking for vitals. One of them looked up at me. He's hypothermic, unresponsive. We need to move him inside now. They lifted him onto a stretcher and wheeled him rapidly through the ED doors. I followed. In the brightly lit trauma bay, I saw his face clearly for the first time. It was Evan Torrance, exactly as he appeared in the badge photograph. The ED team worked quickly, warming blankets, IV fluids, cardiac monitoring. But the monitors showed no pulse, no respiratory effort. The attending physician called time of death at 3:59 a.m. I stood in the doorway, unable to move. The physician approached me. Did you know him? I shook my head. No, I thought he died 4 years ago. The physician looked confused. What? I pulled out my phone and showed him the incident report I had photographed from the database. Evan Torrance died March 7th, 2016, hypothermia, right outside. The physician read the report, then looked at the body on the stretcher. That's impossible. But it had happened. We stood there, both of us silent, until Gail arrived 30 minutes later. She reviewed the situation, confirmed the deceased's identity through the badge on his uniform, and contacted the hospital administrator. By 6 a.m., the body had been transferred to the morgue. The incident was classified as unexplained. The police were notified. An investigation was opened. I completed my shift and went home. The next night, I arrived at 6:51 p.m. The ice dome was gone. The pavement was clear, dry, salted. No trace of the badge remained. Gail informed me that Evan Torrance's personnel record now showed 2 death dates, March 7th, 2016 and February 14th, 2020. The hospital could not explain it. The database entries were both verified, both accurate. Evan Torrance had died twice, 4 years apart, in the exact same location. I requested a transfer to a different department. It was denied. ED Security was understaffed. I submitted my resignation on March 1st, 2020. It was processed without issue. But last week I received my new employee badge in the mail. I do not work there anymore. I have not worked there in years. The badge has my photograph, my name. The issue date is June 4th, 2015. Some credentials, I have learned, are never deactivated. They simply wait in the cold until it is time to be used again. Story 5. Lockdown drill that wasn't scheduled. The alert came through at 2:36 a.m. Code Silver. Lockdown protocol initiated. I reached for the override console and found my authorization already entered, time-stamped 5 minutes into the future. I worked as a hospital security supervisor at Glenmont Regional Medical Center from August of 2018 through February of 2021. The position entailed oversight of the overnight security team, coordination of emergency response protocols, and management of the facility's electronic access control systems. I reported directly to the Director of Security and maintained ultimate authority over lockdown procedures during my shift. My hours were 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Sunday through Thursday. Glenmont Regional was a 400-bed facility serving a rural county in upstate New York. The hospital had implemented a comprehensive security infrastructure in 2017, following a statewide mandate requiring enhanced active threat preparedness. The system included automated lockdown capabilities, magnetic door locks on all exterior and high-risk interior access points, panic buttons distributed throughout clinical areas, and a centralized command console located in the security office. Lockdown drills were conducted quarterly, scheduled months in advance, coordinated with local law enforcement and hospital administration. Staff received mandatory training annually. The drills followed a predictable script: announcement via PA system, door locks engaged, staff sheltered in designated secure rooms, all clear issued after 15 minutes. Compliance was monitored, deficiencies documented, and corrective actions implemented. The system was reliable, bureaucratic, and most importantly, required manual initiation. Only 3 individuals possessed the authorization codes necessary to trigger a facility-wide lockdown: myself, the day shift security supervisor, and the director of security. The codes were 16-digit alphanumeric sequences, changed quarterly, stored in encrypted files accessible only from the command console in the security office. On January 19, 2021, the system initiated a lockdown without authorization. I arrived for my shift at 9:52 p.m. The night was cold but unremarkable. Temperature in the low 20s, no precipitation, light traffic on the access road leading to the hospital. I parked in the staff lot, entered through the administrative entrance, and relieved the evening supervisor at 10:03 p.m. The shift briefing was routine. Census stable, no active incidents, 2 officers on mobile patrol, 1 stationed at the emergency department, 1 conducting rounds in the surgical wing. I settled into the security office and began reviewing system logs. The office was a windowless room on the ground floor adjacent to the main lobby, equipped with a 12-monitor CCTV array, the access control console, radio equipment, and a desk with 2 networked computers. 1 computer managed security systems, the other connected to the hospital's administrative network for reporting and documentation. At 2:36 a.m., the command console emitted a sharp alert tone. I looked at the screen. Red text flashed: Code Silver. Active threat. Lockdown initiated. I stared at the message, momentarily confused. No drill was scheduled. No alert had been issued via radio or PA system. I checked the console's override panel. The lockdown authorization field showed my user ID and credential code, time-stamped 0241 a.m. That timestamp was 5 minutes in the future. I glanced at the wall clock, 2:36 a.m. The system claimed I would authorize the lockdown at 2:41 a.m., 5 minutes from now, but the lockdown had already been initiated. I reached for the override controls to cancel the lockdown. The console displayed, "Override request received, lockdown protocol in progress, estimated completion 0241 a.m. The doors were already locking. I heard the magnetic seals engaging throughout the building, A series of heavy clicks and thuds as 247 doors secured simultaneously. The PA system activated, code silver, lockdown in effect. All personnel secure your locations, code silver. The announcement repeated 3 times, then silence. I radioed my officers. All units, security command, confirm your status. The ED officer responded immediately. Command, ED secure, what's the situation? Stand by, ED, attempting to verify. The mobile patrol officers checked in. Both reported their locations were secure. Neither had observed any threat or suspicious activity. I accessed the hospital's incident log. No code silver had been reported by any department. No panic buttons had been activated. No external alerts from law enforcement. I contacted the night administrator, a woman named Denise Lattimore who oversaw hospital operations during overnight hours. She answered on the second ring, her voice tense. Security, what's happening? My door's just locked. I'm attempting to determine that. Did you receive any alerts indicating a threat? No, nothing. The announcement said code silver, but I haven't been notified of any active situation. Neither have I. The system initiated the lockdown autonomously. That's not possible. Lockdowns require manual authorization. I'm aware. But the system shows my credentials authorizing the lockdown at 0241 a.m. It's 2:37 now. Exactly. There was a pause. Can you override it? I'm attempting to. The system says the protocol is in progress and will complete at 2:41. That doesn't make sense. I agreed. I accessed the lockdown protocol interface and entered my override code. The console responded, "Override denied. Lockdown sequence must complete as authorized." I tried again. Same result. Denise contacted the on-call director of security, a man named Philip Marsh, and explained the situation. He instructed me to manually disable the lockdown by accessing the electrical sub-panel that controlled the magnetic door locks. I left the security office, moving quickly through the main corridor toward the basement-level mechanical room. The hallways were empty, silent except for the hum of ventilation and the distant beeping of patient monitors. Every door I passed was sealed, red indicator lights glowing above the frames. I reached the mechanical room and unlocked it with my master key. Inside, I located the sub-panel controlling the security system. I opened it and examined the breaker configuration. The lockdown circuit was clearly labeled. I switched it off. Nothing happened. The red indicator lights in the corridor outside remained lit. The doors remained sealed. I flipped the breaker on and off again. No effect. I radioed Denise. Override attempt unsuccessful. Doors remain locked. Can you cut power to the entire security system? That would disable all access control, including fire exits. It's not recommended. What do you suggest? We wait until 0241 and see if the system releases automatically as indicated. She agreed reluctantly. I returned to the security office. The command console still displayed lockdown protocol in progress. The countdown timer showed 3 minutes remaining until 2:41 a.m. I reviewed the CCTV feeds. Every corridor, every ward, every waiting area was empty of unauthorized personnel. There was no active threat, yet the system insisted one existed. At 2:39 a.m., my radio crackled. One of the mobile patrol officers, a man named Derek Sims, reported his location. Command Unit 4. I'm in the West Wing, 2nd floor. Doors are sealed here as well. I've conducted a visual sweep. No suspicious activity. Copy. Unit 4. Continue monitoring. Command, I have a question. The lockdown protocol, who initiated it? It was initiated automatically. I'm investigating. Automatically? That's not standard procedure. I'm aware. At 2:40 a.m., Denise radioed. Security, I'm getting calls from staff asking how long this will last. What should I tell them? Tell them we're resolving a technical malfunction. Lockdown should lift at 0241. Should? That's what the system indicates. At 2:41 a.m., exactly as predicted, the command console chimed. The red text changed to green. Lockdown complete. All clear. Doors releasing. I heard the magnetic seals disengaging throughout the building. The PA system activated. All clear. Code Silver resolved. Resume normal operations. The doors unlocked. The corridor lights returned to standard brightness. The building exhaled. I checked the system log. The lockdown was recorded as a completed drill. Duration 5 minutes. Authorization credited to my user ID at 0241 a.m. The timestamp now matched the current time. Denise radioed. Security, what just happened? The system completed its lockdown sequence as scheduled. But there was no threat. Correct. Then why did it lock down? I don't know. Philip Marsh arrived at the hospital at 3:23 a.m. He reviewed the system logs with me in the security office, comparing timestamps, verifying credentials, checking for unauthorized access or software malfunctions. He found nothing. The system had functioned exactly as designed. The lockdown had been authorized using my credentials at 2:41 a.m. The protocol had executed flawlessly. But you didn't authorize it, Philip said. No. And the timestamp was wrong initially. It showed 2:41 at 2:36, 5 minutes early. That suggests a system clock error. The system clock was accurate. I verified it against the wall clock and my watch. Philip leaned back in his chair. Then someone else used your credentials. My credentials require biometric confirmation in addition to the password. The system logs show my fingerprint scan at 0241. You were here at 2:41? I was here, but I didn't scan my fingerprint or enter the lockdown code. Philip had no explanation. He filed an incident report and contacted the security system vendor to request a diagnostic audit. The audit was conducted on January 25th. Technicians examined every component of the system: software, hardware, network security, access logs. They found no evidence of malfunction, intrusion, or error. The system had operated correctly. Their conclusion: I had initiated the lockdown and failed to remember doing so, possibly due to fatigue or distraction. I disputed this. I had not touched the console between 2:30 and 2:45 a.m. But the biometric logs contradicted my account. The system had recorded my fingerprint scan at 2:41 a.m. Philip suggested I take a few days off. I declined. On February 2nd, it happened again. At 1:52 a.m., the command console alerted, Code Silver, active threat, lockdown initiated. The authorization field showed my credentials, time-stamped 01:57 a.m., 5 minutes in the future. The lockdown engaged, doors sealed, PA announcement repeated. My officers checked in, reporting no threats. I did not attempt to override. I simply waited. At 1:57 a.m., the system released. All clear announced. Lockdown recorded as a completed drill. Denise radioed immediately. Not again. Confirmed, same pattern. We need to disable the system. I'll recommend that to Philip. Philip arrived within the hour. He reviewed the logs. The pattern was identical. My credentials, future timestamp, 5-minute lockdown, automatic release. This is happening weekly, he said. Twice in 2 weeks, I corrected. Do you recall touching the console at 1:57? No. He examined my hands. Your fingers show no residue from the biometric scanner. The scanner used a micro-adhesive compound to ensure clean reads. It left a faint residue on fingertips for approximately 30 minutes. My fingers were clean. You didn't scan your fingerprint, Philip concluded. I know. But the system says you did. Yes. He contacted the vendor again. They dispatched a senior technician who arrived on February 5th. The technician spent 6 hours examining the biometric scanner, the console firmware, the authorization protocols. He discovered something. The biometric scans recorded at the times of the unauthorized lockdowns were not live scans. They were replays, archived fingerprint data from previous legitimate scans inserted into the log at the precise moment of lockdown authorization. Someone or something had replayed my biometric authentication to initiate the lockdowns without my physical presence. That requires administrative access to the authentication database, the technician explained, and knowledge of your credential codes. Who has that access? Philip asked. Only your user account and the system root account, which is password protected and monitored. Has anyone accessed the root account? The technician checked. No unauthorized access logged. Then how is this happening? The technician had no answer. On February 9th, the lockdown occurred again. 1:14 a.m. Same pattern. Future timestamp. 5-minute duration. Automatic release. On February 16th, 12:47 a.m. On February 23rd, 3:03 a.m. Every week like clockwork. Staff began to anticipate them. The drills, if that's what they were, became routine. Compliance remained high, but the sense of urgency faded. People stopped asking why. They simply waited for the all clear. I stopped filing incident reports. There was nothing new to document. On March 2nd, Philip called me into his office during my shift. He was accompanied by the hospital's legal counsel and the director of risk management. They informed me that the unauthorized lockdowns represented a liability concern. If a real emergency occurred during one of the false lockdowns, response would be delayed, potentially resulting in harm. They asked if I had any explanation for the events. I did not. They asked if I was deliberately initiating the lockdowns. I was not. They placed me on investigatory suspension, effective immediately, pending resolution of the matter. I was escorted from the building at 4:31 a.m. on March 2nd, 2021. The lockdown stopped. For 3 weeks, no alerts were triggered. The system functioned normally. The investigation concluded that despite my denials, I had been responsible for the unauthorized lockdowns, possibly due to psychological stressors or subconscious behavior. I was terminated on March 25th, 2021. On March 30th, the lockdowns resumed. Philip contacted me at my home. It happened again last night, same pattern, your credentials, future timestamp. I don't work there anymore, I said. I know, but the system still recognizes your account as active. Deactivate it. We did, on March 2nd, but the logs show your credentials being used. That's impossible. I know. He asked if I would return to the hospital to assist with the investigation. I declined. The lockdowns have continued weekly. The hospital has replaced the entire security system. New vendor, new software, new hardware, new biometric scanners. The lockdowns persist. They occur at irregular intervals, always during overnight hours, always using credentials that no longer exist, always completing exactly 5 minutes after initiation. The hospital has stopped trying to prevent them. They have reclassified them as scheduled maintenance drills and updated their protocols accordingly. Staff members follow the routine without question now. They have learned that some drills are mandatory even when no one orders them. I still receive system alerts on my phone, push notifications time-stamped minutes before they occur, informing me that I have authorized a lockdown. I have deleted the app. I have changed my phone number. The notifications continue. Some protocols I have learned enforce themselves, and once a drill is scheduled, it runs to completion, whether anyone remembers ordering it or not. Story 6. Thermal scan anomaly. The heat signature measured 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, human normal. It stood motionless in the center of Ward C, which had been closed and unheated for 3 months. The thermal scanner confirmed presence. The visual feed showed nothing but empty beds and darkness. I worked as an overnight security officer specializing in infrared patrol at Marshall Heights Hospital from October of 2019 through January of 2021. The position was created following the hospital's acquisition of thermal imaging equipment intended to supplement traditional visual surveillance in areas with compromised lighting or limited camera coverage. My responsibilities included conducting systematic thermal scans of designated zones during each shift, documenting anomalies, and coordinating with facilities management to address environmental issues such as heating malfunctions or water leaks that manifested as temperature irregularities. Marshall Heights was an aging facility, portions of which dated to the 1950s. The building had been expanded repeatedly, resulting in a complex layout with several wings that were seasonally closed to reduce operational costs. During winter months, 3 wards on the 3rd floor, designated Ward C, Ward D, and Ward E, were decommissioned. Heating systems powered down, water lines drained, access restricted. These closures freed up nursing staff and reduced utility expenses while patient census declined during flu season. The thermal imaging system consisted of a handheld scanner, an infrared camera capable of detecting temperature differentials and displaying them as a color-coded visual field. Warm objects appeared in yellow, orange, or red. Cool objects in blue or purple. The device was calibrated to highlight human body temperature, approximately 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, as bright red. I carried the scanner during patrols, sweeping it across corridors, rooms, and mechanical spaces to identify heat signatures that might indicate unauthorized occupancy, electrical faults, or plumbing failures. The work was solitary and repetitive. I walked predetermined routes, scanning methodically, logging findings in a digital report filed at shift end. Most nights yielded nothing noteworthy, an occasional overheated transformer, a radiator that had not fully shut down, a window left open allowing cold air infiltration. The scanner functioned as intended, translating temperature into image, revealing what the eye could not see in darkness. The anomaly first appeared on December 14th, 2020. I began my shift at 10:47 p.m. The temperature outside was 19 degrees Fahrenheit, the coldest night thus far that winter. Snow had fallen intermittently throughout the evening, accumulating 2 inches on the hospital grounds. Inside, the heating system labored against the cold, maintaining patient areas at 72 degrees while sealed-off wings dropped toward ambient exterior temperatures. My patrol route included a thermal scan of the closed 3rd-floor wards to verify that heating systems remained offline and no residual warmth suggested unauthorized reactivation. I accessed the 3rd floor via the main stairwell at 11:39 p.m. and proceeded to Ward C's entrance. The door was locked, marked with a laminated sign, "Ward closed, no access, contact facilities." I unlocked the door with my master key and stepped inside. The ward was dark, lit only by faint emergency egress lighting near the stairwell exit. The air was cold, stale, motionless. Dust motes hung suspended in the beam of my flashlight. I raised the thermal scanner and activated it. The screen displayed the ward in shades of deep blue and purple, indicating uniform cold. Walls, floors, empty bed frames, all radiating minimal heat. I panned the scanner slowly from left to right, sweeping the length of the ward. Midway through the sweep, a bright red signature appeared on the screen. I stopped and focused the scanner on the location. The signature was humanoid, roughly 6 feet tall, standing upright in the center of the ward, equidistant from the rows of beds lining either side. The thermal reading displayed on the scanner's sidebar, 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit. I lowered the scanner and shone my flashlight toward the location. The ward was empty. No person, no object, just vacant space between the beds. I raised the scanner again. The red signature was still there, stationary, clearly defined, human-shaped. I advanced slowly toward the location, flashlight and scanner raised. The heat signature remained visible in the scanner's display, growing larger as I approached. When I reached the spot where the signature appeared to be standing, I was surrounded only by cold, empty air. The scanner showed the signature directly in front of me, within arm's reach. I extended my hand. I felt nothing. The air temperature was uniform, cold, uninterrupted. I swept my flashlight in a full circle. The ward was empty. No person, no equipment, no heat source. I backed away and conducted a visual inspection of the entire ward, checking behind beds and storage closets beneath furniture. I found no one. I returned to the location where the thermal signature had appeared and raised the scanner again. The signature was gone. The ward displayed uniform cold across the entire field of view. I scanned the area repeatedly, adjusting sensitivity settings, verifying calibration. The signature did not reappear. I documented the incident in my report. Thermal anomaly detected in Ward C 0039 hours. Signature consistent with human presence, but visual inspection confirmed no occupancy. Possible equipment malfunction. Recommend scanner calibration check. I submitted the report at shift end and mentioned the incident to the day shift supervisor. He dismissed it as a calibration error and said he would have the scanner inspected. The scanner was tested on December 16th. The technician confirmed it was functioning correctly. No malfunctions detected. On December 20th, I conducted thermal scans of the third floor wards again. At 12:14 a.m., I entered Ward C. The heat signature was there, same location, same position, center of the ward, standing upright. Same temperature reading, 98.6 degrees. I approached it. Visual inspection revealed nothing. I reached toward the location shown in the scanner. Empty air. The signature remained visible for approximately 90 seconds, then faded from the display. I documented it again. This time I included a screenshot from the scanner showing the red humanoid figure against the blue background of the cold ward. My supervisor reviewed the report and the image. He contacted facilities management to verify that no heating equipment was active in Ward C. Facilities confirmed that all systems remained offline. No heat sources were present. The supervisor suggested the scanner was detecting residual warmth from building materials that had not fully equilibrated to ambient temperature. I disagreed. Building materials would not produce a humanoid shape or consistent body temperature reading. He filed my report and instructed me to continue monitoring. On December 27th, the signature appeared again. This time, it moved. I entered Ward C at 11:56 p.m. The thermal scan immediately revealed the red signature positioned near the far end of the ward by the windows. I observed it through the scanner's display. It stood motionless for approximately 30 seconds. Then it walked. The signature moved slowly across the ward, maintaining its upright posture, advancing with a deliberate, measured gait. I watched through the scanner as it walked the length of the ward, passing directly in front of me at a distance of approximately 10 feet. I lowered the scanner and looked with my eyes. Nothing. Empty space. I raised the scanner again. The signature was exiting the ward, moving toward the doorway through which I had entered. It passed through the doorway, the thermal image walking directly through the closed door, and disappeared from the scanner's range. I followed immediately, stepping into the corridor. I scanned left and right. The signature was gone. I searched the entire third floor. It did not reappear. I documented the incident with detailed timestamps and directional notes. I described the movement as consistent with ambulatory human behavior. My supervisor escalated the report to the director of security, a woman named Victoria Brennan, who had worked at Marshall Heights for 14 years. She reviewed the documentation and decided to accompany me on a patrol to observe the phenomenon firsthand. On January 3rd, 2021, Victoria and I entered Ward C at 12:31 a.m. I activated the thermal scanner and swept the ward. The signature appeared immediately, standing near the center of the room. I handed the scanner to Victoria. There, center of the ward. She looked at the screen, then at the empty ward, then back at the screen. I see it. We approached together. The signature remained stationary. Victoria reached out toward the location, moving her hand through the space where the scanner indicated a torso should be. "Nothing," she said. The signature did not react to her movement. We stood there for several minutes, observing. The signature remained motionless, constant, radiating 98.6 degrees. Then it turned. The movement was slow, deliberate. The head rotated toward us, followed by the shoulders and torso. The signature faced us directly. Victoria stiffened. "It knows we're here." I agreed. The signature took a step forward, then another. It began walking toward us. Victoria backed away instinctively. I remained still, watching through the scanner as the figure approached. It advanced to within 3 feet, then stopped. We stood there, the three of us. Victoria, myself, and the heat signature that should not exist. Then it raised one arm. The thermal image showed the limb extending, the hand reaching toward Victoria's face. She did not move. The hand stopped inches from her cheek. Then it lowered. The signature turned and walked away, exiting the ward through the far door without opening it. Victoria and I followed, scanning the corridor. The signature was gone. We returned to the security office. Victoria contacted the hospital's environmental services director and requested an immediate inspection of Ward C for any possible heat sources, malfunctioning equipment, rodents, unexplained airflow. The inspection was conducted the following day. Nothing was found. The ward was cold, empty, and structurally sound. On January 10th, the signature appeared in Ward D. I had not scanned Ward D previously. It was farther down my patrol route and lower priority. But following the incidents in Ward C, I expanded my thermal sweeps to include all closed wards. At 1:04 a.m., I entered Ward D. The thermal scan revealed the signature immediately, standing near the nurse's station. Same shape, same temperature, same unnerving stillness. I did not approach. I simply observed. After 3 minutes, the signature walked toward the exit and disappeared. On January 17th, it appeared in Ward E. The pattern was consistent. The signature manifested in closed, unheated wards, stood motionless for a period, then walked a short distance before vanishing. I began to notice something else. The hospital's security access log showed badge swipes in the closed wards. My badge at times corresponding exactly to when I observed the signatures. But the badge swipes were recorded before I entered the wards. On January 24th at 12:57 a.m., the access log showed my badge being used to unlock Ward C. I reviewed the timestamp immediately. I had not yet arrived at the 3rd floor. I was on the 2nd floor conducting rounds in the medical surgical unit. I ascended to the 3rd floor and entered Ward C at 1:06 a.m. 9 minutes after the system claimed I had already entered. The thermal signature was waiting inside. I approached it, scanner raised. The figure stood motionless, facing me. I stopped approximately 5 feet away. "Who are you?" I asked aloud, feeling foolish but compelled. The signature did not respond. It remained stationary for approximately 90 seconds, then walked past me toward the exit. I turned to follow, and as I did, I saw something on the scanner's display that I had not noticed before. Behind me, near the doorway, a second thermal signature appeared. This one was also human-shaped, also 98.6 degrees. I spun around, scanning visually. The ward was empty. I raised the scanner. 2 signatures now, one near the exit, one standing directly behind where I had been. A third signature appeared near the windows, then a fourth, a fifth. Within seconds, the scanner displayed 7 red humanoid figures distributed throughout Ward C, all standing motionless, all radiating body temperature. I backed toward the exit, scanner raised, watching the screen. The signatures did not move. I exited the ward and sealed the door behind me. I scanned through the door. The signatures were gone. I radioed Victoria immediately. She arrived within 12 minutes. We entered Ward C together. The thermal scan showed nothing. Uniform cold, empty ward. We waited. After 8 minutes, a single signature appeared, then another. Within 5 minutes, the ward contained 11 signatures, all standing silent and motionless. Victoria documented them with her phone, photographing the scanner's display. "This isn't possible," she said quietly. The signatures began to move. Slowly, they walked toward us, converging from all directions. We retreated into the corridor and closed the door. Victoria contacted the hospital administrator and the facility's director. An emergency meeting was convened at 7 a.m. I was asked to present my findings and demonstrate the scanner. At 8:43 a.m., in the presence of the administrator, the facility's director, and 3 department heads, I conducted a thermal scan of Ward C. The scanner displayed uniform cold. No signatures. I scanned repeatedly. Nothing. The administrator dismissed the meeting. He suggested the scanner had been malfunctioning due to cold temperatures affecting the sensor calibration. I was reassigned to standard visual patrols. The thermal scanner was removed from service. On January 31st, my final shift, I returned to Ward C without authorization. I entered at 2:17 a.m. and raised the thermal scanner, which I had retrieved from the equipment locker. The ward was filled with signatures, dozens of them standing in rows positioned beside the empty beds as though occupying the space where patients would have been. I walked among them, the scanner showing their presence on all sides, my eyes seeing nothing but darkness and dust. I stopped in the center of the ward and looked at the scanner's display. The signatures surrounded me completely. Then I lowered the scanner and looked at my own hands. I raised the scanner and pointed it at myself. The display showed empty space where I stood. No heat signature, no body temperature. I looked at my hands again, solid, real. I raised the scanner toward the signatures. They were all looking at me now, all turned to face the cold space where I should have been. I left Ward C and submitted my resignation that morning. The hospital accepted it without question, but my badge still swipes into the closed wards. The access logs show entries every night at times when I am miles away at home, trying to sleep. And sometimes in the early hours before dawn, I feel cold, colder than any room should be. And I wonder if the scanner would show me at all, or if I have already become one of the signatures. Some things I have learned are seen not by the eye but by the absence of warmth. And once the system learns to track you by your heat, it does not stop even when the warmth is gone. Story 7. End of shift. End of clearance. The clock showed 6:58 a.m. End of shift. I logged out, surrendered my radio, clocked off. The incident report appeared on my screen at 7:14 a.m., flagged urgent, assigned to me, describing actions I would take tonight, 16 hours from now. In the west stairwell during a fire alarm that hasn't happened yet. I worked as a senior overnight security officer at Crestwood Memorial Hospital from January of 2017 through February of 2021. The position represented the culmination of 19 years in hospital security. I had worked my way from entry-level patrol to site supervisor, accumulating certifications, incident response experience, and institutional knowledge that made me indispensable during crisis situations. My shift was 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., 6 nights a week by choice. I preferred the quiet, the autonomy, the absence of administrative interference. Crestwood Memorial was a comprehensive medical center with 600 beds, a Level 2 trauma designation, and a sprawling campus that included 2 parking structures, 4 connected buildings, and a helipad. The security department employed 43 officers across 3 shifts. I supervised the overnight team, which consisted of 8 officers responsible for patrols, access control, emergency response, and liaison with local law enforcement when incidents warranted. The job had become routine in the way that only long tenure makes possible. I knew every corridor, every blind spot, every temperamental door lock. I knew which nurses would prop fire exits open for cigarette breaks, which physicians parked in restricted zones, which maintenance workers could be trusted with after-hours key access. I had responded to hundreds of codes, behavioral emergencies, security threats, missing patients, suspicious packages. The hospital had become as familiar as my own home, more familiar perhaps. The irregularity began on February 7, 2021. I completed my shift at 6:57 a.m., 3 minutes early as was my custom. I logged out of the security workstation, cleared my desk, surrendered my radio and keys to the day shift supervisor, and clocked out via the biometric terminal in the security office. The system confirmed, shift end 06:57, Officer Garrett Donovan. Total hours, 8 hours, 7 minutes. I left the hospital through the administrative entrance, walked to my car in the staff lot, and drove home. I arrived at 7:22 a.m., showered, ate breakfast, and went to bed by 8:15 a.m. My routine was consistent, developed over years of overnight work. I woke at 4:37 p.m. disoriented by a persistent buzzing from my phone. 17 missed calls, 12 voicemails, 23 text messages, all from the hospital. I checked the most recent voicemail left by the security director, Marcus Reeves, at 4:21 p.m. Garrett, it's Marcus. I need you to call me immediately. There's been an incident. We need clarification on your report. Call me back. I returned the call. Marcus answered on the first ring. Garrett, where are you? At home. I just woke up. What's happening? I need you to come in. Now. We have an incident report filed under your name, and there are significant inconsistencies. What incident? Fire alarm in the west stairwell, 0714 this morning. You filed a report describing a response involving a patient found on the stairwell landing, disoriented, claiming he didn't remember how he got there. You called for medical evaluation and the patient was transferred to the ED. The report is detailed, procedurally correct, and time-stamped 0714. Marcus, I clocked out at 6:57. I wasn't in the building at 7:14. There was a pause. The report is in the system. Your user ID, your digital signature. That's impossible. I left at 7. I drove home. The biometric log shows you clocked out at 6:57, but the incident report was filed at 7:14. And the patient you described, we have no record of any patient found in the west stairwell this morning. No one called for medical evaluation. The ED has no intake matching the description. Then the report is fabricated. Someone used my credentials. Your credentials require biometric confirmation. The system shows your fingerprint authorization at 0714. I felt a cold, creeping confusion. I wasn't there. I need you to come in. I arrived at the hospital at 5:41 p.m. Marcus met me in the security office and displayed the incident report on his computer. The document was meticulous. It described my response to a fire alarm activation in the west stairwell at 07:09 a.m. I had ascended to the third-floor landing and discovered a male patient, approximately 60 years old, sitting against the wall, dressed in a hospital gown, disoriented and unable to recall his name or location. I had radioed for medical assistance, remained with the patient until a nurse arrived and transferred custody at 07:26 a.m. The report included timestamps, radio log references, and my observations of the patient's condition. It was written in my style, concise, procedural, factual. But I had not written it. "This didn't happen," I said. "The report exists," Marcus replied. "It was filed from your workstation using your login with your biometric verification. Check the cameras. I left the building at 6:57. Marcus had already reviewed the footage. The recording showed me exiting through the administrative entrance at 6:58 a.m., walking to my car and driving away. "Then how does this report exist?" I asked. Marcus had no answer. He reviewed the radio logs from 07:09 a.m. There was a transmission, my voice, my radio ID, reporting the patient in the stairwell. The recording was archived in the system. We listened to it. It was my voice. Calm, professional, describing the situation exactly as detailed in the report. "That's not me," I said. "I wasn't there. It's your voice. Then someone faked it, synthesized it, deepfake audio. From your radio ID, in real time, during an active fire alarm?" I had no explanation. Marcus contacted the IT department. They audited my account, checking for unauthorized access or credential theft. The audit confirmed that no external access had occurred. All actions attributed to my account had been authenticated with my biometric data. "Is it possible you came back?" Marcus asked carefully. "After clocking out, maybe you forgot or—" "No, I drove home. I went to bed." "Can anyone verify that?" "I lived alone. No one could verify it." Marcus placed me on administrative leave pending investigation. He said it was procedural, non-disciplinary, but necessary until the discrepancy was resolved. I left the hospital at 7:33 p.m., confused and unsettled. At 9:54 p.m., I received an automated email from the hospital's scheduling system. "Shift reminder. Your shift begins in 6 minutes. Please report to the security office." I was on leave. I should not have a scheduled shift. I called Marcus. He confirmed that my schedule had been cleared during the leave period. No shifts were assigned, yet the system insisted I was expected in 6 minutes. At 10 p.m. exactly, the hospital's security workstation logged my arrival. I was not there. I was at home. I received a text message from one of my officers, a man named Luis Herrera. "Hey, Garrett, you're here, but didn't check in. Everything okay?" I called him immediately. "Luis, I'm at home. I'm on leave." "What? I just saw you walk past the security office. That's impossible." "Garrett, you walked right past me. You didn't respond when I said hello, so I thought maybe you didn't hear me. You went toward the stairwell." "Luis, I am at my house. I am not in the building." There was a long pause. "Then who did I just see?" Marcus was contacted. He reviewed the camera footage from 10 p.m. The recording showed a figure in a security uniform entering the administrative entrance, walking through the lobby and proceeding toward the west stairwell. The figure's face was partially obscured by the angle, but the build, gait, and uniform matched mine. Marcus froze the frame and enhanced the image. The uniform displayed my name badge. He called me. "Garrett, this is you, on camera, at 10:04 p.m., but you're saying you're at home." "I am at home, that is not me." "Then who is it?" I had no answer. Marcus dispatched 2 officers to locate the figure. They searched the stairwells, the corridors, the patrol routes. They found no one. But at 10:37 p.m., another incident report was filed under my name. This one described a routine patrol of the 4th floor. Visual inspection of patient corridors. No irregularities observed. I had not written it. I was still at home. At 11:14 p.m., a radio transmission was logged. My voice, my radio ID, checking in from the parking structure. At 12:41 a.m., another report, suspicious odor investigated in the basement mechanical room, determined to be routine steam condensation. The reports continued throughout the night, filed every 90 minutes, each describing actions I was not taking, locations I was not visiting. At 6:57 a.m., the system logged my clock out, shift complete. I had not clocked in. Marcus called me at 7:43 a.m. "Garrett, we need to talk. Something is very wrong." "I know. The system logged a full shift for you. 8 hours, incident reports, radio transmissions, camera footage. But you're telling me you were home the entire time." "I was. Can you prove it?" "I could not. I had no alibi, no witnesses, no evidence except my own certainty." Marcus asked me to come to the hospital. I arrived at 8:29 a.m. He showed me the footage from overnight. Frame by frame, the cameras had captured a figure in my uniform, conducting my patrols, following my routes, performing my duties. The figure moved like me. It checked doors like me. It paused at the same locations where I habitually paused. "It knows your routines," Marcus said quietly. I watched myself walk past cameras I had walked past 1,000 times. The figure never looked directly at the lens, always kept its face angled away just enough to prevent clear identification. "This is impossible," I said. "I know." Marcus escalated the situation to hospital administration and legal counsel. They convened an emergency meeting. I was questioned extensively. Had I given my credentials to anyone? Had I lost my badge? Had I shared my passwords? No. They reviewed access logs, biometric records, system security. Everything confirmed that the actions attributed to me had been authenticated correctly. The hospital's conclusion: I was lying, suffering from a psychological episode, or complicit in an elaborate hoax. I was terminated on February 15, 2021. I submitted my badge, my keys, my radio. My credentials were deactivated immediately. That night at 10 p.m., the system logged my arrival. Marcus called me, his voice tight with barely controlled alarm. "You're in the building." "I'm not. I'm at home. The cameras show you." "Marcus, I don't work there anymore. My badge was deactivated." "I know, but the system let you in." The figure worked a full shift that night. Patrols, reports, radio check-ins. At 6:57 a.m., it clocked out. The pattern has continued every night since. The hospital cannot stop it. They have changed the locks, reset all credentials, upgraded the biometric scanners. But every night at 10 p.m., the system logs my arrival. Every night, the cameras capture a figure in my uniform performing my duties. The incident reports are filed under my name. The radio transmissions use my voice. The patrols follow my routes exactly. The hospital has assigned a new officer to my former shift. But the system continues to recognize me as the senior officer on duty. I receive the shift completion reports every morning via email. Shift end 0657. Officer Garrett Donovan. Total hours 8 hours. 7 minutes. I have tried to ignore it, but last night I received a different kind of report. An incident report filed at 7:14 a.m., 14 minutes after my shift should have ended. The report described a fire alarm in the west stairwell, a patient found disoriented on the 3rd floor landing, medical evaluation requested. The report was time-stamped today, but it described an incident that will happen tonight, 16 hours from now. I do not know what I am supposed to do. The system expects me to complete rounds I no longer walk, respond to incidents that have not yet occurred, file reports for shifts I will never work. But the hospital still sends my paycheck. The schedule still lists my name, and every night something wearing my uniform clocks in and walks the corridors I used to know. Some clearances, I have learned, are never revoked. They simply continue, long after the person they belong to has clocked out for the last time. And some shifts never truly end. They simply wait for you to return and finish what the system insists you started.